That's Mark.
Yeah.
When was Mark born?
When was he born? Well, he was, I think, 3 years older than me. 1910, I would say. I'm 96. If he were alive, he'd be 99. And probably still playing tennis.
And where was he born in?
Yeah, where was he born?
He was born in Chicago.
Remember what other question you had?
Oh, do you?
And I was born in Manhattan, and actually in the suburbs in Far Rockaway, which is near the beach.
Who was your Who was the first person in your family to come to America?
Oh my gosh, about 1863 or so. On my mother's side, there was a man who came from Germany. And my grandfather came from Berlin in Germany. My father's people came from a border city called Bialystok. It's between Poland and Russia. But that was my grandparents.
So your grandparents, if they were alive, they would be like 150 years old.
If they were alive. Well, I'd hate to see them. It's bad enough being 96. But really, if they were 150, I don't think I'd want to see them.
How old were you when you started out?
When I
Started art.
art? Well, when I started art seriously was when your Aunt Robin, Jane Robin, was an infant. She was about 3 months old, and I said, I got to do something else. So I went to the 92nd Street Y, and I studied under Aaron Berkman, who was a wonderful teacher. I have a book by him called Art and Space. And that's when I started it.
What did you look like when you were 1?
When I was 1 year, oh, I was a beautiful baby. Oh, was I beautiful. I was a gorgeous baby. But I'm going to show you a painting of when I was 25 that my sister did of me. It's upstairs. I have to take you up to see the
We'll
picture.
see that. You want to ask for your second question? What does
Wait.
it say? Not yet? What was the other one? Oh, what is this one says? What did your house look like when you were 10?
When I was 10, well, my father died when I was 9, so we had to give up our house, which was in Beechhurst, Long Island, where we had a maid and a butler. So now we were living in 3 rooms in an apartment house when I was 10. My mother, my sister, and myself. And we went to PS 82, which was 3 blocks away, and I had to drag my sister to school because if I let go of her hand, she would run back home. So it was not an easy time. And the cute thing was, I met a little boy in the apartment house whose mother was also a widow. And we decided we wanted to help our mothers, and we were going into the perfume business. So we gathered all the rose petals we could gather and went into the bathroom and we soaked the rose petals. Well, nothing really ever happened, but we tried, and we had a wonderful time doing it. Yeah.
So you were born in New York City, but then you moved to Long Island?
Yeah, yes, born in, actually, our residence was New York City, at 95th Street and Lexington Avenue. But my mother was visiting her father And that's where she had the baby, at his summer home in Far Rockaway.
So you were born in Far Rockaway?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Well, you got enough information about this woman. I want to show you your great-grandma's painting upstairs.
What was it like in New York when you were growing up?
What was it like? Pretty much like it is today. We had very high snowbanks, I remember. When I was your size, they were over my head. And the buildings were not as tall because they hadn't gone into these 30, 40, 50, 60-foot or more buildings.
Yeah, the houses were probably like just little huts, a lot of the houses.
No huts, apartment
like,
houses.
how did you get around? Because
How did you get around?
Well, how did you get around? Because you didn't drive.
Walking, taking a trolley car in the city. But of course my daddy had a red Buick. My daddy was a real sport, but he didn't live too long. He was only 35 when he died. So that was pretty sad.
What was his name?
Sidney Edmund Levenberg. Levenberg means flat mountain, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my maiden name, Marjorie Daisy Levenberg. And now it's Marjorie Daisy Weil. Aunt Bee was my father's sister. And she was responsible for a lot of the culture that I had. I went to dancing school, I went to art school, I went to concerts. And her two daughters were very talented. One daughter was a dancer with the Humphrey Weidman group, and the other daughter was a teacher at the Little Red Schoolhouse. And she had written a book. It's somewhere. I don't have it. Those are interesting questions. How did you get all those interesting questions?
Well, we just thought the mom.
Wowee.
How did Sydney meet Bessie?
Well, Bessie was friendly with his sister. And Sydney came over and he saw my grandfather's beautiful big brownstone house and the gold furniture. And he said to himself, "This is the woman for me."
How did he have such a nice house?
My grandpa,
Mm-hmm.
very interesting story, came from Germany, and he was only about 17 years old, and he worked, I don't know what he did, and he and his cousin bought a burned out tobacco house. And they kept what they could of it, and they started a tobacco business. And they imported tobacco from Cuba. My grandpa would go to Cuba and or bring back tobacco, and he became very wealthy. And his cousin as well. That whole branch of the family became very wealthy from the tobacco business. And my grandpa was a very strict grandpa, but he was a good man. And when my father died, he took care of my mother and her two daughters, Margie and Gladys.
Mm-hmm.
So it was lucky I had a grandpa who was willing to take over the responsibility, because my mother was very incompetent. A very sweet woman, but very incompetent. So that's pretty much of my background.